50. Committees. A committee is understood in parliamentary law as a body of one or more persons elected or appointed by or by direction of an assembly or society to consider, investigate, or take action on certain matters or subjects, or to do all of these things. Unlike a board, a committee is not itself considered to be a form of assembly. Although the term committee commonly implies a relatively small number of persons appointed to give a task more detailed attention than is possible in a body the size of the assembly, this characteristic more accurately describes what are known as ordinary committees. An assembly can also designate all of its members present to act as a committee, which is called a committee of the whole, and is distinguished from an ordinary committee in larger committee. In large assemblies, the use of a committee of the whole is a convenient method of considering a question when it is desired to allow each member to speak an unlimited number of times in debate. Committees of the whole are treated separately in 52. The statements in this section apply principally to ordinary committees. Ordinary committees are of two types: standing committees, which have a continuing existence, and special committees, which go out of existence as soon as they've completed a specified task. Generally, the term committee implies that, within the area of its assigned responsibilities, the committee has less authority to act independently for the society or other constituting power than a board is usually understood to have. Thus, if the committee is to do more than to report its findings or recommendations to the assembly, it may be empowered to act for the society only on specific instructions, or if it is given standing powers, its action may be more closely subject to review than a board's, or it may be required to report more fully. Also, unlike most boards, a committee in general does not have a regular meeting time as established by rule, but meetings of the committee are called as stated in 50, 21 through 22. Some standing committees, however, particularly in large state or national organizations, function virtually in the manner of boards, although not designated as such. When a committee is appointed with power, this means with power to take all the steps necessary to carry out its instructions. In large assemblies of those doing a great volume of business, much of the preliminary work and the preparation of subjects for consideration is usually done by committees. In many such bodies, in fact, it is advisable to have every main question go to a committee before final action on it is taken by the assembly. Standing committees are constituted to perform a continuing function and remain in existence permanently or for the life of the assembly that establishes them. In an ordinary society, the members of such a committee serve for a term corresponding to that of the officers, or until their successors have been chosen, unless the bylaws or other rules otherwise expressly provide. Thus, a new body of committee members is normally appointed at the beginning of each administration. A standing committee must be constituted by name A, by a specific provision in the bylaws, or B, by a resolution which is in effect a special rule of order, and therefore requires for its adoption either previous notice and 2/3 vote, or a vote of a majority of the entire membership, if any of the following conditions are to apply. If the committee is to have standing authority to act for the society on matters of a certain class without specific instructions from the assembly, or if all business of a certain class is to be automatically referred to the committee, or if some other rule of parliamentary procedure is affected by the committee's assigned function. If a standing committee's assigned function does not affect a rule of parliamentary procedure in any of these three ways, it can be established by a standing rule adopted by a majority vote without notice, although even in such a case, the committee is frequently constituted by name and the bylaws as indicated above. If certain standing committees are enumerated in the bylaws, no standing committee aside from those enumerated can be established without amending the bylaws, unless the bylaws also include a provision authorizing the creation of additional standing committees. See also 56, 44 through 48. A standing committee of a society reports to the assembly of the society and not to the executive board or board of directors, unless the bylaws provide otherwise. In some societies, standing committees in effect have charge of certain branches of the organization's work, in which case these committees are really in the nature of boards. A special select or ad hoc committee is a committee appointed, as the need arises, to carry out a specified task, at the completion of which, that is on presentation of its final report to the assembly, it automatically ceases to exist. A special committee may not be appointed to perform a task that falls within the assigned function of an existing standing committee. Appointment of committees. Methods of appointment. In an assembly or organization that has not prescribed in its bylaws or rules how the members of its committee shall be selected, the method can be described by unanimous consent or by majority vote at the time the committee is appointed, as described in 1313. Or, in the case of a special committee, the method can be specified in the motion to establish the committee. The power to appoint a committee carries with it the power to appoint the chairman and to fill any vacancy that may arise in the committee. The two paragraphs cited designating the committee chairman, 1317 through 18, should be read in connection with the 5 methods of appointing a committee described below. It is possible for persons who are not members of the assembly or the society to be appointed to committees, even to the position of committee chairman, but control over each such appointment is reserved to the assembly in the individual case. From this example, it follows that, referring to these 5 methods of appointment, non-assembly members may be appointed to committees by methods A, B, C, and E, as listed below. When method D is used and the chair appoints either a standing or special committee, however, the governing rule regarding the appointment of non-assembly members is as stated under naming members to a special committee in 1315 through 16. Methods by which committees can be appointed are as follows. A. Election by ballot. This method is principally applicable to important standing committees having extensive powers. Under this procedure, nominations for committee membership can be made by any of the methods described in 46, then the nominees are voted on by ballot, just as in an election of a board, a majority vote being necessary to elect. In the event that more or less than the required number receive a majority, places on the committee are filled as explained in 4633. If it is the Assembly's practice, or its wish in the particular case, to select the committee chairman, rather than leave it to the committee to do so, consider 1318, the chairmanship can be treated as a separate position to be voted on for the same ballot with the other committee members, or in a smaller assembly, if preferred, the chairman can be elected from among the committee's members on a second ballot, after their names have been announced. B. Nominations from the floor, open nominations with viva voce election, usually called simply nominations from the floor. This is a common method of appointing members to a committee when the assembly wishes to reserve the selection to itself without requiring secrecy in the voting. When this method has been declared upon, the chair says members will please nominate, or nominations for the committee are now in order. The chair announces each nomination as he hears it, as shown in 46.8. No one has a right to nominate more than one person to membership on the committee until every other member has had an opportunity to nominate a candidate, unless the nomination of more than one person at a time by a single member can be entertained only by unanimous consent. If no more than the prescribed number of committee members are nominated, a vote is unnecessary, since the fact that no more than the required number are nominated shows that there is a unanimous consent that the committee should consist of these persons, which the chair declares as follows. Messengers A, B, and C, Mrs. D, and Mrs. E are nominated. Are there any further nominations? Since there are no further nominations, the committee is composed of the persons just named. Or he repeats the name if he feels it is advisable. If there are more nominees than the required number of committee members, then, when there are no further nominations, the chair repeats all of the names in the order in which they were nominated, and in the same order puts the question on the election of each nominee, one at a time until the proper number have been elected, as described for viva voce elections. 46. For reasons explained in 46:37 through 39, those nominated last in such a case have less chance of being elected. After the selection of committee members has been completed, the Assembly can elect a committee chairman from among them, if desired, or a chairman can be elected separately first. C. Nominations by the chair, with confirmation by voice vote. This method is used when the Assembly wishes to take advantage of the chair's knowledge and judgment as to suitable appointees, yet wishes to have veto power. In this case, the chair names the same number of persons as there are to be members of the committee, always naming his choice of committee chairman first. Thus, the chair nominates Mr. X as chairman, Mrs. Y, and Mr. Z. The question is, shall these persons constitute a committee? Any member can then move to strike out one or more names, but not to insert new ones, which the chair must do if such a motion to strike out is adopted. After any changes in the original names have thus been made, the chair repeats the proposed names as they stand and puts the question on the entire list. Mr. X, Mrs. Y, and Mr. W are nominated. Those in favor of those persons constituting the committee say aye, those opposed say no, etc. D. Appointment by the chair. In the absence of special conditions, appointment of committees by the chair or by the regular presiding officer is usually the best method in large assemblies, as it is the ordinary procedure in many smaller societies as well. The president cannot assume such power, however, unless it is given to him in the bylaws or by action of the assembly in the individual case. See 13.8c, 13.13, 13.15, and 56.46. When the bylaws provide that the president shall appoint all committees, this power does not transfer to the chair if someone else presides. A clause in the bylaws assigning to the president the duty of appointing all committees should therefore contain appropriate provision for its own suspension if necessary. For example, if there is occasion to appoint a special committee during a meeting for which the president is absent. In addition, a clause conferring on the president such power of appointment should exclude the Pardon me, I'm going to have to cut myself off there. I have missed a note. After a particular sentence in C, that sentence being, in this case, the chair names the same number of persons as there are to be members of the committee, always naming his choice of committee chairman first. Thus, the chair nominates Mr. X as chairman, Mrs. Y, and Mr. Z. There is a note, which I had missed, thinking it was punctuation. The note reads, the first person that the chair names is automatically chairman of the committee unless the assembly rejects the person as a committee member or unless he or she declines the chairmanship, but it is good practice for the chair to mention him or her as chairman. See 13.17. Back to reading from the point where it was initially left off. In addition, a clause conferring on the president such power of appointment should exclude the committee, and it may be advisable for such a clause also to exclude all disciplinary committees. Whenever it is stated in the bylaws, with or without the proper exceptions just noted, that the President shall appoint all committees, this means that the President shall select the persons to serve on such committees as the bylaws prescribe to be established or the Assembly may direct to be appointed. It does not mean that the President can himself decide to appoint and assign tasks to a group and thereby give it the status of a committee of the Society. When the Chair appoints a committee, no vote is taken on the appointees, except any who are not members of the Assembly in cases where there is no prior authorization for the Chair to appoint non-Assembly members to the committee, either in the bylaws or in a motion directing the appointment of the particular committee. See also 1315 and 5646. But the Chair must announce the names of the committee members to the Assembly, naming the chairman of the committee first, as in C above, and until such announcement is made, the committee cannot act. If the Assembly orders the appointment of a special committee and it is desired to let the Chair select the committee members after adjournment, this delay must be authorized by the Assembly. The names of the committee members must then be announced at the next meeting and recorded in the minutes. E. Appointment by adoption of a motion naming members of a committee. This method finds use in the case of special committees when the rules or particular conditions do not dictate the use of another procedure. The names of the proposed committee members can be included in the motion proposing to appoint the committee, either as it is originally offered or by way of an amendment. Or, if the motion to appoint the committee is adopted without prescribing the manner of appointment, a second motion can be made that the committee be composed of Mr. X, Mr. Y, etc. In either case, the motion naming the committee members can specify the committee chairman or not as the Assembly wishes. If other names intended to replace one or more of those in the motion are proposed while the motion is pending, all such names and those in the motion are treated as nominations and are voted on as in the case of an election. See also 13.8c and 13.10 through 18. Unless the bylaws or other governing rules expressly provide that committee members shall serve and until their succession are chosen, or for a fixed period, as for a term of 2 years, in which case the procedure for their removal or replacement is the same as that for officers described in the second bulleted item in 6216, committee members, including the chairman, may be removed or replaced as follows. If appointment was as provided in paragraphs A, B, C, or E above, the removal or replacement of a committee member requires the same vote as for any other motion to rescind or amend something previously adopted. If appointment was by the President acting alone under paragraph D, he may he may remove or replace committee members by his own act. See 1323. A committee, except a committee of the whole, 52, can appoint subcommittees, which are responsible to and report to the committee and not to the Assembly. Subcommittees must consist of members of the committee, except when otherwise authorized by the Society in cases where the committee is appointed to take action that requires the assistance of others. The rules affecting ex officio members of committees are the same as those applying to ex officio members of boards, 49.8 through 9. When the bylaws provide that the President shall be ex officio a member of all committees, or of all committees with the stated exception of those in which the President is best excluded, see 5647, the President is an ex officio member who has the right, but not the obligation, to participate in the proceedings of the committees, and he is not counted in determining the number required for a quorum or whether a quorum is present at a meeting. The resignation of a member of a committee should be addressed to the appointing power, and it is the responsibility of that power to fill the resulting vacancy. Consider 4757 through 58. Proper composition of committees. The members of a standing committee should be chosen so as to provide the strongest possible group for the handling of any task that may arise within the province of the committee. In the case of a special committee, the purpose for which it is appointed affects the desirable size and composition as follows. When a special committee is appointed to implement an order of the Assembly, it should be small and should consist only of those in favor of the action to be carried out. If anyone not in sympathy with the action is appointed, he should ask to be excused. When a special committee is appointed for deliberation or investigation, however, it should often be larger, and it should represent, as far as possible, all points of view in the organization so that its opinion will carry maximum weight. When such a committee is properly selected, its recommendations will most often reflect the will of the Assembly. By care in selecting committees, debates on delicate and troublesome questions in organized societies can be mostly confined to the committees. The usefulness of the committee will be greatly impaired, on the other hand, if any important fraction of the Assembly is not represented. Information, instructions, and referred papers. Upon the appointment of a committee, it is the duty of the Secretary of the Society to see that all persons appointed are notified, and to furnish a list of the members of the committee to its chairman, or, in the chairman's absence, to some other authorized committee member. When a subject or item of business is referred to the committee, normally at the time of its appointment if it is a special committee, or at any time if it is a standing committee, the Secretary provides the committee chairman or his representative with copies of the papers, motion, or other matter formally referred to it, and whatever instructions the Assembly has given. Upon the committee's request, any other papers or books necessary for the proper performance of its duties must be made advisable to it by the appropriate officers of the Society, who can first consult with the President if in doubt whether the requested papers or books are indeed needed by the committee. A committee should take care to preserve the papers referred to it from the Society since, after its assignment is completed, they must be returned in the same condition as when received. If the committee wishes to write on copies of the documents, therefore, it must obtain its own photocopies, unless it has been provided with extra copies specified in its instructions as for that purpose. In any case, amendments prepared for recommendations to the Assembly when the committee reports should always be drawn up on a separate sheet. Conduct of business in committees. Committee meetings. When a committee has been appointed, its chairman or first name member temporarily acting, see 1318, should call it together. Note: for cases in which it is important to bring the members of a committee together for a meeting, the report of the committee can contain what has been agreed to by every one of its members, see 51.2. Also, committees are sometimes authorized to hold electronic meetings, see 930 through 36, especially electronic meeting committees, 935. Back to reading. If some members of the committee believe that the chairman has failed to call this initial meeting or any subsequent meeting when necessary, a meeting of the committee may be called by any two of its members, unless, such as for very large committees, the Assembly's rules or instructions prescribe or empower the committee itself to require a larger number. It is the responsibility of the person or persons calling a committee meeting to ensure that reasonable notice of its time and place is sent to every committee member. The quorum in a committee is a majority of its membership unless the Assembly has prescribed a different quorum. See Chapter 40. Adjournment provisions for future meetings. When a committee intends to reconvene, it can simply adjourn or adjourn to meet at a later time. In the first case, when it adjourns without appointing a time for another meeting, the next meeting is called for as provided in the previous paragraph. In the second case, when it sets an adjourned meeting, notice of the adjourned meeting is not required, although it is desirable to give such notice if feasible, but reasonable efforts must be made to inform absent members of its time and place. All of the meetings of a special committee constitute one session. 8. When a special committee has finished with the business assigned to it, a motion is made for the committee to rise, which is equivalent to the motion to adjourn sine die, or without day, and for the chairman or some other member to make its report to the Assembly. The motion to rise is never used in standing committees, or in special committees unless they are ready to go out of existence. Committee procedure. In small committees, the chairman usually acts as secretary, but in large ones and many standing committees, the secretary may be chosen to keep a brief memorandum in the nature of minutes for the use of the committee. The informalities and modifications of the regular rules of parliamentary procedure listed in 4921 for use in small boards are applicable during the meetings of all standing and special committees, unless the committee is otherwise instructed by the society. See next paragraph below. Also, the rules governing the motions to rescind, to amend something previously adopted, and to reconsider are modified to state in 3527 and 3735. In committees, the chairman is usually the most active participant in the discussion and work of the committee. In order that there may be no interference with the Assembly's having the benefit of its committee's nature judgment, motions to close or limit debate, 15 and 16, are not allowed in committees. Note: if a member abuses his privilege of speaking an unlimited number of times in debate in order to obstruct the business of the committee, such dilatory behavior should be reported to the committee's parent, which may then remove that remove that member from the committee, adopt an order limiting and closing debate in the committee, or take such other action as it deems advisable. However, if there will be no opportunity for this to occur within the time frame needed to effectively resolve the problem, it is the duty of the committee chairman to deny such a member any further recognition to speak in debate on the pending question. Back to reading. Committees of organized societies operate under the bylaws, the parliamentary authority, and any special rules of order or standing rules of the society which may be applicable to them. A committee may not adopt its own rules except as authorized in the rules of the society or instructions given to the committee by its parent assembly in a particular case. If a standing or special committee is so large that it can function best in the manner of a full-scale assembly, it should be instructed that the informalities and modifications of the regular rules of parliamentary procedure listed for small boards in 4921 are not to apply to its proceedings. The parent assembly may adopt such instructions to the committee by majority vote. When a committee is to make substantive recommendations or decisions on an important matter, it should give members of the society an opportunity to appear before it and present their views on the subject at a time scheduled by the committee. Such a meeting is usually called a hearing. During actual deliberations of the committee, only committee members have the right to be present. A standing or special committee may protect itself against breaches of order by its members during committee meetings and against annoyance by non-members by employing the procedures outlined in 6110 through 21, but the committee, instead of itself imposing any penalty on a disorderly member, can only report such behavior to the committee's parent body, which may then take such action as it deems advisable. However, if there will be no opportunity for this to occur within the time needed to effectively resolve the problems and enable the committee to complete its assigned task, the committee may protect itself against such disruptive behavior by requiring the disorderly member to leave the meeting room during the remainder of the meeting. Continuity and conclusion of committee assignment. Since members of standing committees and ordinary societies are appointed for a term corresponding to that of the officer, such a committee is generally required to report at least once a year, usually at the annual meeting, on its activities and everything referred to it during the year. When a standing committee submits such a report at the conclusion of its members' term, the committee is not discharged with further consideration of referred matters on which it reports partially at the time, unless the assembly so votes. 36. Thus, such matters normally go over to the new committee. The members of the old committee continue their duties until their successors are chosen. A special committee, since it is appointed for a specific purpose, continues to exist until the duty assigned to it is accomplished unless discharged sooner, c. 36, and it ceases to exist as soon as the assembly receives its final report. The fact that an annual meeting intervenes does not discharge a special committee, but in a body which ceases to exist or in which the terms of some or all of its members expire at a definite time, like a convention of delegates, a city council, or a board of directors, a special committee expires with the body that appointed it, unless it is appointed expressly to report at a later time. If it does not report, its life expires with that of the body to which it was to report.